Holy cow. Oh, this is a lot of decks. Yeah, and I still don't know what I'm gonna do, but I'm gonna dive into this video anyway. Here we go. Okay, now there's a lot of activity happening in my neighborhood, so apologies in advance for the noise of cars and motorcycles and voices and hydraulic equipment. It's too beautiful a day not to take advantage of this light and this air. And well, you know, let's face it, the real activity, it's what's happening right here, right down here on this table decks below. Yeah, it's kind of overwhelming. I have narrowed things down. Pause for diesel truck. I have narrowed things down. I've narrowed things down to a baker's dozen, 13 decks. And I mean, that may sound like having narrowed it down, but you know, believe you me, it is. And we're going to go through those quickly in a minute, and then come up with some final choices, and then the final choice. But before I do that work of winnowing and selecting, I wanted to just briefly share the decks that didn't even make it into the baker's dozen, and yet I am, you know, grieving to say goodbye to them for the next 2.5 months. I talked last year about this as a Bachelorx party, which I kind of like. You know, this is a time to set aside my tarot polyamorous ways, to forego that kind of delightful skittishness of spirit flitting from deck to deck as the whims and the wisp of the wind will take me. You know, I love my decks, and I love using all my decks, and I'm not going to be doing that for the next 2.5 weeks. So without further ado, the decks that didn't make the baker's dozen, starting with, perhaps first and foremost in my mind, the Terra Volatile, which is, you know, beautiful, an incredible deck. And Nick in the Mindful Tarot community, and perhaps some others, if this is you, please comment below, is using this deck. And he actually started the challenge early, posting on that 5th minor arcana suit, the suit of vessels. That was the reason that this deck didn't really ever become a serious contender for me, because I didn't want to do a suit, an extra suit. I wanted to stick with the structure of the traditional tarot, and I didn't want to violate the integrity of, such a beautiful deck, violate the integrity of a given deck. That was one reason, for instance, that the Spolia Tarot, which is a Minchiate deck, didn't make it into consideration for me. I didn't want to cut things down. All right, Terra Volatile, not one of the baker's dozen. Another not one of the baker's dozen, which I'm sad about, but it is what it is. Choices have to be made, and that is Anatolian's Tarot of the Abyss. Still a deck that I want to spend some serious time with, but the imagery in the end is just not what I want to be working with right now. But I will miss this opportunity. And as I mentioned, these decks that didn't make the baker's dozen, these are decks that I will definitely be coming back to and working with in some serious way in 2023. I love that Knight of Swords and that 3 of Swords. Okay, yeah, you know, you go through these and you're like, really? Am I not? Why am I not? Okay, I'm not going to undo the decisions I've made so far. Terror of the Abyss, not part of the baker's dozen. I really was considering seriously using the Aquarian Tarot at one point. This is my little mini version, Conrad Stain's vintaged version of this with the fish scale backs and the kind of vintage coloring. I love this version of it, and I love this deck, as some of you may know, since I've filmed many videos on it. But in the end, although I do think working with the classic deck is an amazing thing to do with the Drop 'em 78, I wanted to stretch myself a little bit more. This wasn't the time for this deck. I love it though. Okay. Also, another small format deck, which is a new favorite, is the notorious JBG. No, Jasmine Beckett Griffin. Am I remembering? I can never get her name right. But this is a beautiful version of her artwork that's in the public domain. It's a surprisingly deep reader. I had an amazing deck dialogue with this deck, but it's a little bit limited in its imagery. Not quite the time for this, not quite the exercise for this. Similarly, not quite the time for working with the Line Strider, which is a deck that, I love that King of Pentacles. It's a deck whose imagery I deeply admire. I have the mass market, I have the mini, I have the indie version, the original version of it. Oh, I love that Two of Cups. But in the end, just the deck dialogue wasn't compelling, and it doesn't quite, it's not quite pulling at me right now. Similarly, a deck that I have tremendously powerful feelings about, but the imagery isn't pulling at me. This is the Keisha Bow. And, you know, this deck, for so many reasons, this first Japanese tarot deck, this wacky hybrid of Mousset and Waite Smith, this delicious color palette of teal and red and kind of butterscotch, but too much of a clone, maybe too straightforward in an odd way. It just feels like it's not gonna do what I need it to do. These are all honorable mentions, right? They didn't make it into the Baker's Dozen, but they're decks that I really, really love. I mean, really, I'm a tarot slut, so it's true. The Margaret Peterson. This is the 20th anniversary edition with the beautiful borderless backs, the great bendy cardstock, the gorgeous burgundy and saffron coloring. And although I had a really deep deck dialogue reading with this, it's not in the cut. Why? I think in the end, I'm worried that I was worried that the abstract imagery wasn't going to give me enough to chew on, and the imagery is all too similar, and I just wasn't feeling this pull toward this kind of abstraction right now. There are a number of decks that I didn't, this was one I did a deck dialogue with, which I'm really sad about not using. Eliza Kingsbury's Star String Tarot, which is beautifully produced in like my favorite linen cardstock. Gorgeous sort of woodblock imagery, natural imagery. I love her lines, her clarity of vision. How's that for a Queen of Pentacles? Brilliant deck. Love it. Really drawn to it. Can you hear me like sighing and having a hard time letting it go? In many ways, it hits me the way the Wild Unknown hits me, which is, you know, one of my all-time power decks. It's been the deck that I've done Wheel of Life decks with ever since I got it. So my annual deck. It's the deck that I used last year in the Drop 'em 78 challenge. You know, I love this deck. You all know this deck. And in some ways, Eliza Kingsbury's Star String Tarot does a similar thing for me as this deck. So I think in the end, that's probably why, that Two of Cups, that's probably why it's not the deck for me this year. But it's definitely a deck I'm going to spend a fair amount of time with in 2023. A deck that I wish I was playing with, Michelle Kohler used this deck last year in her Drop 'em 78, if I'm remembering correctly. I love it. Such a brilliant, this is the Tarot des Ozarks. Such a brilliant deck. Brilliant take on the Marseille. Beautiful. But I didn't even consider it for deck dialogue this year, because if I'm going to have a Marseille Tarot in the mix, I want to have the Dodal. And that is one of my Baker dozen. So we'll look at the Dodal in a second. Other decks that didn't even make it into the deck dialogues, but that I'm going to really miss playing with, my two Revival Art tarot decks. Just this whole gorgeous cardstock, gorgeous fine art imagery, the way that fine art decks kind of invite a certain kind of reverie, a certain kind of work. I love both of them. This is the first edition. I also have the second edition. No, is this the second edition? Hold on. No, that was the first edition. I also have the second. Love these decks, but won't be working on them. And I just recently got the Wiser Tarot, which I think is probably going to be one of my go-to Waite Smith decks. Really well produced, problematic in its attempt to diversify the tarot, but you know, we are going to screw this up as we try to work with privilege, if we try to work with positionalities, we try to work with our assumptions. We will screw it up, and I'm thrilled that Wiser made this risk. I also think that the palette and the watercolor is really just quite beautiful. So I admire this deck. I haven't read with it yet, but I won't be reading with it anytime super soon. It's not part of my Baker's Dozen, and it's not going to be one of the decks I consider for the Drop 'em 78 challenge. Similarly, I recently acquired Conrad Stain's My Dirty Pam, and I also got a copy of his facsimile of the Pam C. I didn't get the A or the B because I have an A and a B, because I'm a very, very, very freaking lucky woman. And I didn't get the D either, because there's only so many decks I can buy at one time from Make Playing Cards, even though they want all of my money, and they will get all of my money all in good time. But I did get the C, and I'm not even going to pull the decks out, but just look at the Fool's face, right? This is, you know, that redrawing like in the B, and it's so cute. He's so cute. Okay, not going to be working with that facsimile anytime soon, or with, and this is just such a dreamy deck. My hands really, this is the thick cardstock that Make Playing Cards does, which I know, Conrad, you think that it bends. It probably has some issues with creasing, but I'm really liking it. I've been playing with it for the past week. I love what you did with this deck, Conrad, if you're watching. And for others, it's really, really cool. Really cool, aged, beat up looking, thick, silky cardstock. It's really fun. But I won't be reading with it, not for any time soon. I also won't be reading with Pixie's Whisper, although it's given me so many good readings, and it gave me a really beautiful deck dialogue the other day. But it's just not quite, it doesn't have quite the traction I need right now, I think, for this challenge. I love this deck. I will come back to this deck, but not in the Drop 'em 78 challenge. Okay, I think that's, is that all? yes, I think now all of the decks that remain on the table, oh no, here's one more. Didn't make it to the baker's dozen, but do you guys know that expression, the baker's dozen? That might be like a weird Americanism. It might also just be a weird ism in some parts of America. I don't know. Baker's dozen is 13, right? Sorry. My husband's truck. Pulling. You can see it. He's pulling a now empty trailer. Okay. Baker's dozen, the idea is you buy a dozen, but the baker puts in one more. So that's a baker's dozen is 13. Anyway, standard playing card tarot. I just saw someone mention this in the Mindful Tarot Facebook that they're going to be using this deck for their Drop 'em 78. I'm so glad because I love this deck. I love this deck. But I decided that if I was going to use a kind of stylized, really abstract deck, it was going to be either the Dodal or the Orbifold. No, I really want to play with this deck though. All right, but not just now, in the future. Okay, so let's dive in. The baker's dozen. In no particular order, how I've started this out in no particular order is by randomly pulling one card from each of the 13 decks to kind of help me figure out what my I'm gonna say top five. Top five? Yeah, my top five. And then I'm gonna do a little bit more effortful drawing from those top five and then narrow it down to the top one and hopefully get this video filmed before my power dies because I just got a low power mode warning on my iPad. It is what it is, folks. Okay, so the Augenblick Tarot. I pulled the Two of Cups, and you're going to see there's a whole bunch of Two of Cups in this 13. I think there's 3 different Two of Cups, but this one in Venice. Oh my God. The Two of Cups from the Augenblick Tarot. And from the Jean Dodal, the Seven of Wands, which is, that's a card that really speaks to me, people. I think of this as the Bodhisattva card of what does it mean to put yourself out there for the world, right? To seek to save all beings. That's the Bodhisattva ideal, but it's that kind of standing tall and standing firm. And I love how the Dodal envisions it. It's just the Mousset imagery, but just that color and the artisan tarot sharpness of the image. Beautiful. The Orbifold. I pulled the Star. Yeah. It's pretty special. And I love how Michael Bridge Dixon, in the majors, he has a little bit idiosyncratic use of the elements. So he's pulling here on water and earth, that blue and that green for the star. Beautiful. From the Mary L. first edition. I wish I loved the cardstock of this deck because that actually is this problem for me. And I love the first edition more than the second. So anyway, it is what it is. But this is the card that I pulled. The Queen of Wands. She is one of my very close archetypes, and God, she's amazing here. This power, this sort of yoni power, it just, for so many reasons, this is energy that I do need to encounter right now. Now, through the Drop 'em 78 challenge, I don't know. And Scylla Conway's Shimmering Veil Tarot. Scylla wrote me a really great comment. I haven't had a chance to respond to it on my last video featuring her deck, and I just really super appreciate it. I appreciate her insight and wisdom and her art, and this deck is amazing. 8 of Pentacles. Yeah. So the artist at work. The Ostara Tarot, a deck that has its hooks in me. I'm longing to really spend, it's one of my, I hate this word soul deck, but it really is one of my decks. The Four of Swords, man. Oops, I had I had it the right way the first time. The Four of Swords, which I've gotten in this deck a few times already, and it is, you know, that sort of invitation to really pause and rest and reflect, and holy cow, that is energy that I need. Raven's Prophecy, Six of Wands. I mean, I love this deck. I love Maggie Stiefvater's. I've been reading the Raven Boys cycle again, and it's brilliant. I want to dive into the Scorpio Sea tarot, but this Six of Wands really leaves me cold. It doesn't feel like the energy I need right now, and I when I got this card, I was like, I felt relief, like, okay, I love this deck, but this is now taking it out of the running for me. So this one is clearly, for me, out of the running. The Decisive Pull of a Zipper. That's nice. It's not the deck for me now. On the other hand, here's another Two of Cups, and this is the Lonely Dreamer, and this has been a fan favorite for a long time. Now this has been, I mean, this was the deck I initially thought I would do this challenge with, and then I started doing more and more deck dialogues. So, but I mean, she wants to play with me for sure, and this is just so sweet, reminding me that this deck, which has a lot of darkness, visually darkness in it, a lot of somber palettes, but it's also got such brightness and such fire, and it's beautiful. Pagan Otherworlds. This has felt like a deck that I really do need to work with, but I pulled the Ace of Pentacles. I'm like, this leaves me a little bit cold. Doesn't take it out of the running because there's so much power in this deck for me, but it leaves me a little cold. And Zara Kitten Shop's Playful Heart. You know, this deck keeps being up there for me because, I mean, look at this Temperance. This Temperance is like self-instantiating. This Temperance, by which I mean, this Temperance card is bringing me into temperance. It's bringing me into balance. I need more cuteness because I am pretty freaking melancholic and pretty freaking deep, you know? All right, Playful Heart. Lua Tarot. Another Two of Cups. Yeah, love it. And Majestic Earth. The Three of Wands. Three of Wands in this deck, yeah. I mean, this is what this deck brings to me. It brings these vistas. And yeah, Emily Carding, who also wrote me a great response saying to my last video featuring her deck. It's so, you know, we YouTube-y tarot people, we collectors and readers, when the artists actually watch our videos, it's like, I mean, I feel so blessed and lucky and embarrassed and blown away. So, but she pointed out, yeah, this is a Thoth-inspired or Thoth-inspired deck. The Warrior Prince. Yeah. So more fire, you know, am I fire of fire, am I water of fire, am I knight, am I queen? Pretty powerful. Pretty powerful. Okay. Which are the five? What do you think, folks? Okay, I'm gonna see if I can wean out anything. Get it down a little bit. Okay, I think we have, now I've gotten it down to 5, 9. That's not very good. All right, let me do a little bit better. I think we're going to do it like this. I've got 3 Two of Cups, and I think I want to figure out which of these Two of Cups. Ooh, this feels hard already. These are all promising the same kind of partnership. I think that if I'm going to work with a landscape deck, it's going to be the Majestic Earth, because the artwork gives me a vista that I need. So although it pains me to set the Augenblick down, I think I'm setting it down because I'm keeping the Majestic Earth in. And although I really do feel myself wanting to work with engravings and older imagery, I think now is not the time for that work with the Lua. So I think I'm going to keep in the Lonely Dreamer. Okay, let's see if there's any other ways I can do this. Yeah, so I really want to have a calibration deck. Now, I've talked about calibration decks in other videos, and if you're in the Mindful Tarot community and you're receiving my email on the mailing list, if you're not, let me know. Email me, my address is down below, or let me know via Facebook or somehow. But if you received the recent mailing, I sent it out yesterday, you'll have heard me also talk more about the calibration deck. The idea of a calibration deck is a reference deck, a deck that you kind of have, well, you trust, you already have a deep connection with. There's stuff that you get about it really clearly, and that deck becomes a reference which allows you to clarify the deck that you're really diving deep with. So one way to use a calibration deck would be to pick the card of the day, which in this case with the Drop'em 78, that's, you know what the card of the day is. And then to pick the same card in your calibration reference deck, and use that to help you and kind of nose your way in, leverage your way in to your card of the day. Or you could pick a card at random from your reference deck and also use that to help wedge your way in. I will have a separate video this fall about using the calibration deck, the reference deck. But what I was thinking is for this challenge, I will have one, and it will be a very abstract deck. And the two abstract decks that are in the running for me are these two, the Orbifold and the Jean Dodal. And I really think that I want to use the Marseille. So Jean Dodal made the cut. It's going to be my reference deck, my calibration deck for the Mindful Tarot 2022 Drop'em 78 Challenge. Drum roll. Here it is. Okay. Now that leaves me with 6. Let's see if I can get it down to 5. I've got Lonely Dreamer, Majestic Earth, Kitten Chops, Playful Heart, Pagan Otherworlds, Ostara, and the Mary L. The Mary L, I think, has to be one of my top 5 because it's so deep, it's so powerful, it's so important. Lonely Dreamer has been there for a long time. Has to stay in the mix. Similarly, Pagan Otherworlds, it's just been center of mind, front of mind for a long time. Similarly, Ostara. Of these two, they're so different. Oh my God. I think that much as this opens up space for me, it's more like a refresher deck, a deck that recalibrates, not unlike my calibration deck, but it's a recalibration deck and not something that I want to spend 2.5 months as my soul deck. So soul, S-O-L-E, not S-O-U-L. So I think Majestic Earth is in. So we have, okay, we're moving right along. We've got our five, we've got our 5 choices. And I just got a low battery signal. So I'm going to pause now, get my power cord, probably have to relocate near an outlet. I shall return. Okay, I'm back. So yeah, so the way this is going to go is I'm going to try and do this with 1 card pull for each of the 5 decks and we'll see if that isn't enough, then I'll go do another round and we'll see if we can get there. I feel kind of nervous, which is funny. Okay, so starting, this is not in any particular order, but starting with the Majestic Earth. So I guess the question is, is now the time to work with you? What What do you want to bring to me right now? And we have the Spirit of Trees. And the Spirit is the King, I believe. See, I still don't know this deck very well. I think the Spirit is yeah. So the King, the Master of the Suit. So this is air of fire in my reading of the relationship between the quartz and the elements. Okay. I mean, I need to be working on fire energy in my energy. I need to be working with energy, with that vibrancy, with burnout. I'm actually studying burnout. I'm running a program for healthcare workers and burnout. So, King of Fire. Some might argue that is what I need to be thinking about. And fire is now coming. It's coming forward a lot. It came in my deck dialogue with this deck. I got I think I got the Creature of Trees. Wow, I've gotten all three. No, I've gotten two of the quartz in this suit, and the three of fire, the Three of Wands, the Three of Trees. A lot of fire. Second deck I want to look at, Pagan Otherworlds, which I got the Ace of. And you're a deck that I have loved for a long time. Whoops. And you've loved me too. Thank you. I'm getting a lot of Two of Cups. I think my decks are feeling the love. Okay, so yeah, okay. Now, Two of Cups. Oh man. In a lot of ways, as I've been thinking about Pagan Otherworlds, why I've been wanting to work with this is because it feels to me like a really basic deck in my sort of archetypal, my personal archetypal repertory, like the Wild Unknown. It feels like it's a very important deck for me, but I haven't spent that kind of concerted effort with it. So yeah, but it is pippish, right? It's got these sort of clever pips that are kind of there, well, like this, like we just saw, right? These are pips, but sorry for my horrible hangnails. Jesus Christ. I have had like bad hangnails all my life, and as someone who's now on videos showing my hands, it's super embarrassing. I'm sorry, you guys, you will never see me with like a lovely manicure, and it's not because I don't care about my fingers and I don't care about you. I want to show you beautiful things. My hands will not be among them. It just is what it is. The skin around my nails, it shreds. Don't know why. Okay. As I was saying, these very clever pips that are not scenic exactly. They're not using human figures or like theatrical scenes to portray a Waite Smith message, but they're totally Waite Smithy. If I'm using a Marseille deck as my clarifier, does that make a difference here? Maybe I don't want to use the Marseille if I'm using the Pagan Otherworlds. Maybe I want to use something more like the Orbifold. All right, that opens more questions than it closes, unfortunately. Moving to the Ostara. Oh. This brings such love to my eyes, this deck. I've made a study deck for myself of this deck because I wanted something really durable. So I scanned the images and made a study deck after I got myself a copy of the Indie. This is my study deck, and it's in that plastic Make Playing Cards. It has a slightly different backing. Okay. How do you want to work with me right now? Is now the time? Okay, Page of Swords. With these deck dialogues, I've been thinking about reverse cards mostly as like something that's blocked that the card wants to, the deck wants to help me with. So yeah, Okay, Page of Swords. I think I may have gotten this card when I did my original deck dialogue, if I'm not mistaken. This leaves me wondering. I mean, yes, I want to take the mask off, however. I want that veil of mind, heart, of swordsiness. I don't want to be immersed in that, but maybe I would have to be to work with you. And maybe that's okay. Maybe I'd find some relief with my mind. It's a fascinating deck. It has these 4 different voices, 4 different artists. I think this is the swords, I think is Krista Gibbard. I think that's the artist. Let me just double check. And she's wonderful, but she's actually not my favorite of the 4. I'm just looking this up. Yeah, so Krista Gibbard is the artist. Okay, Lonely Dreamer. Gave me the 2 of Cups. This has been Hachu. This has been a deck that's been so important to me ever since I got it. I have the 1st and the 2nd edition. I love Melissa Weatherspoon. I love her art. I love her eye as a designer. I love her understanding of this particular artist, Odilon Ridon. I love the cardstock. This is the 2nd edition, which is, I think, the one I would use. Okay. Yeah. So, like the Ostara, but instead of the page, we're now at the king. Both decks are inviting me to deal with questions of heart, mind, of air, of the swords. This one is super powerful image. You know, all of the sorrow that I relate to mine, but then these butterflies, I mean, and look at the stars in his hand. Super deep. Okay. Yeah, pretty powerful. And now Mary L. Yeah. This is the last of my 5. I think I need to shuffle her. Bear with me, folks. Oops, trying to do a riffle shuffle with a deck that is this big as my face. Okay, that was not the most successful riffle shuffle. This was one of the cards I got when I did this for the deck dialogues. Oh, it's just amazing. So there's kind of a resonance between the Mary L and the Lonely Dreamer. I think both are inviting me to go into there. I feel like age. I mean, obviously with death and that kind of crone image, but with the Lonely Dreamer too. Did I tuck that deck? There. Yeah, there's some similarity of just this sense of dealing with impermanence and with understanding. Yeah. Okay. So I think the Ostara is out. I think that's where I'm coming to. The Krista Gibbard and the Page of Swords, I think it's just not quite. It's not quite at the level of precision that I need. So I think that one's out. I think we have still the Majestic Earth and Pagan Otherworlds and the Lonely Dreamer. So let's do another round. So we've got 4. Whoops. Hold on. All right. Gonna shuffle. This is gonna be like the most endless video ever. If you're here still, if you're still with me. Okay, so I'm gonna pull these cards and I'm not gonna look at them now. I'm gonna pull each one. Let me do it thoughtfully though. Let me actually be mindful. Let me not just talk about mindfulness, let me actually be mindful. Okay. Is now the time? Okay. Chosen that one. I'm going to choose my pagan otherworlds. One more shuffle. Is now the time. Okay. Lonely Dreamer. Sorry, I keep bending off camera. I love filming out on this deck because the light is good and the air smells nice, although it's a little smoky from wildfires. But my setup is still really not good out here. It's now the time. And finally, the Mary L. I don't think I'm going to riffle shuffle because it's too hard. Oops. Is now the time. Okay, I have my 4 cards. Let's go for the reveal. Mary L. Oh, Ace of Cups. Lonely Dreamer. 10 of Wands. Strength. Holy cow. Oops. Okay, Pagan Otherworlds, even though it's the 8 of Wands. It's not the time. That pip, that 8 of Wands, this is a time, you know, this is a time I know when I am feeling under great weight and I need great strength. It also may be a time for everything that she, he, they bring forward, for the angels here. It's a powerful image. But I think I'm between these two. Lonely Dreamer. Lonely Dreamer. Okay, guys. I am going to be reading with the Lonely Dreamer, and my my calibration deck is going to be the Jean Dodal. You know, it's so funny. I mean, that was where I thought I was going to be, and then I was like, no, it's going to be Pagan Otherworlds. No, it's going to Lonely Dreamer. Lonely Dreamer. That's where I'm going to be. If you have made it this far, bravo. Pat yourself on the back. As always, thank you so much for your practice. And if you haven't joined the Mindful Tarot community, drop me a line, email below, or ask to join the Facebook page. Just come on aboard. It's a lot of fun. A beautiful group of tarot nerds. Take good care, everyone.